Welcome to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with Colin McDougall and Richard Zokol.
Hey everybody, it's another episode of Tough Lies. Colin McDougall here with my great friend Richard Zokol. How are you, Richard?
I am good, Colin. There's lots to talk about with the Masters. That was very exciting. It could have gone a number of different ways, but the true storyline and the historic storyline that it is Rory repeats at the Masters.
Yeah, amazing weekend. Super compelling for different reasons than last year. Unless something dramatic changes, I will say last year's Masters will go down for me as the greatest major tournament, maybe golf tournament of all time in terms of drama and what unfolded when and all that. But this year, different but compelling, and a repeat winner. And I want to maybe save the conversation about Rory and what the look ahead may be for him towards the end of the conversation. I will say we're super lucky to have a wonderful guest this week. We're on a roll. Rick Fehr, former PGA Tour player, is going to join us in a bit, and we're going to talk about the Masters. We're going to talk about a little bit of your background with him at BYU, some wonderful stuff on the horizon, I should say. But let's, I think, get into. I think the best way to attack this is to walk through kind of the chronology of what unfolded in the Masters. We'll spend a little time on the front end of the first two rounds, and obviously Rory's lead, and then what happened Saturday and Sunday, and then and to sort of unpack where we land from there. So Thursday, Friday, Rory goes out there and he carves himself a 6-shot lead, but which obviously is a record and is interesting in and of itself. What to me was really interesting in looking at the stats was he was number 2 in putting and 90th in driving. And I was looking at that and going, well, wait a minute, like, how is it possible that somebody could be that far back in terms of driving and still have that sort of a lead? Like, to me, it was such a disconnect between what I saw on the stats page and what you saw on the leaderboard. What did you think?
Well, I think that in hindsight, we're able to look at this and focus in on that specific statistic. Is that the bottom line is that Rory's got room for improvement. That's scary.
Isn't that crazy to say?
That's scary. And so, but I just want to kind of jump back just a little bit but yesterday history was made. Even though I agree with you that last year's Masters was the best all time, and because it got the world involved in the emotional roller coaster that it was. But back-to-back wins is historic. There's only 4 players in the history of to have done that, and now Rory seems to have unburdened himself in getting to that next level with 6 major championships. So he's moved up to join Phil Mickelson, Nick Faldo, and Lee Trevino. So that's some pretty high level success. And now, but I think also we can dive into this to a significant degree, because he went back to back and he's taken a big burden off his shoulders, and he's winning in the manner of which you just talked about, being the worst player in the field on driving accuracy. And if he gets we can talk about his sequence and his routine, his shot routine, where I think he can tighten it up in that later in the show. But that's an area where he's now focusing on major championship number 7, 8, 9, and then getting past Arnold Palmer, Sam Snead, Bobby Jones, and Tom Watson and Gary Player. So he is, I think, freed up to a significant degree emotionally and motivated to get into the major history books as a major championship in the number and he's got the room improvement to do it. So that's the fascinating story.
Yeah, it truly is. And I was, as I was watching Thursday, Friday, and I think this is something I want to ask Rick as well, it's when you are out there on the golf course, and obviously major, more elevated tournament and so forth, but I'm sure there's been situations, when you were on tour where you're waking up on or going out to tee off, let's say on a Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, and you're like, how are these guys shooting those scores on this course? Like, and how that might affect the way you approach your own avenue for playing that
Mm-hmm.
tournament. And I was curious, when you're in the moment, you see I call it rabbit, but you see somebody rabbit like that where they jump ahead of everybody by a meaningful degree. Does that have an effect on how you as a player choose to play? Does it cause you to do certain things that you might not? Like, what's that like?
Well, it does, and again, it depends. All these situations. Like I remember, let's take the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open in 2000 at Pebble Beach. I remember playing a practice round. There was me and Bobby Clampett and Keith Clearwater and Rick Fehr, and the
Mm-hmm.
golf course was playing really hard, and it's scary, and you got to play strong. And I remember driving out for my first round, in which I was playing in the afternoon, and the scores were low, and I'm going, wow, I can't believe the scores are so low on such a difficult golf course.
Yeah.
So in that situation, if you hit the panic button, it will just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely collapse you. And
Right.
if it
Yeah.
causes you to, I have to play aggressive, you got to play
Yeah.
your game, whatever the game that you have is the old saying is you got to dance with the girl you brung. And
Right.
and if you don't, and if you press a panic button or looking at the leaderboard, you're projecting forward to that, I've got to do this or I've got to do that, it's only going to put more anxiety and pressure on you in the most difficult situation. So it's not advisable. So you just have to kind of get through it and just take what the golf course gives you, and establish your level of performance, and then plot out your game plan and see where it ends up, and it's going to be based on performance.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it was really interesting. The other, so that's the Thursday, Friday. The headline,
Mm,
huge lead. To me, interesting stats. Then we get to Saturday, and we see what unfolds there. And Rory sort of falls back to the
mm-hmm,
field.
mm-hmm,
And I think the inclination is to sort of say, well, there's a mental breakdown or some sort of collapse or that sort of thing. And my take was that's just a regression of his score to reflect actually how he's playing, because he's hitting it all over the planet. And, you can only get away with so much in terms of, like you hit in the trees that many times, you're going to make more trouble for yourself than if you're striping and putting, particularly. Putting can save you, but to me, I wasn't so sure that it was not a sort of, call it a just result, that he was actually back tied in the lead, with the
mm-hmm,
pack. That was probably a better reflection of his overall play for the 3 rounds combined than sort of the narrative
mm-hmm.
that he had this huge lead and sort of
Yeah, and
let's
it's
put up a
fast.
yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He had the huge lead when he was, hitting it all over the place with his driver.
Yeah,
That's a scary proposition. If can you imagine what he'd been doing if he was putting it in the fairway or decided to hit three
yeah,
wood off the tee? But I
yeah.
think the situation, and this is where it's connected to last year, his
Mm-hmm,
emotional connection to, and I think there's, and I'm going to call it the way it is. There's
mm-hmm.
some post-traumatic stress disorder in
Yeah,
Rory still. And
yeah,
he had to get through this year's Masters to kind of hopefully get on the other side of it. So when he after his big lead on after the second round, and he had this massive lead, his 6-shot lead going into the third round, he's still connected. I don't think he feels comfortable at Augusta. He's had so many large leads before, and his post-traumatic stress disorder comes from losing those big leads. And
mm-hmm,
when he comes back to the pack, even though he's still tied for the lead, but in the pack,
mm-hmm,
that's when he's most comfortable. And that's how it unfolded, in my opinion, and I
mm-hmm,
stated that on Saturday evening. Like, if
mm-hmm,
Rory had, because let's look back to last year, his emotional connection to last year. He double bogeys the first hole, he loses the lead. He comes
yeah,
back to the pack. And
yeah,
then he starts
yeah.
performing
Fair
really
point.
well. He gets
Yeah,
the lead back. And then he
yeah,
got the lead. And then he falls back to the pack on the 13th hole when he chips it into the water, which is
mm-hmm,
just like, are you kidding me? That is just
mm-hmm,
ridiculous for for him
mm-hmm,
as a player. And then so after he comes back with, to the pack with another double bogey on 13, he starts performing well again. On the 15th hole, he had that 7-iron that he hooked around the trees that was just unbelievably good.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets back into the lead and he loses it again on the 18th hole. Like he stood in there on the 18th tee and hit that difficult shot down the
Yeah.
middle of the fairway. And for a third time, he lost the lead.
Yeah.
So trauma is in there and he doesn't get it up and down. And I think now that if you come back to this year, his emotional connection to that big lead, he doesn't feel good with big leads. He's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. He only feels good
Yeah.
when he's in the pack, tied for
Yeah.
the lead, but in the pack. That's when
Yeah.
he performs. And we watched it unfold on the back
Yeah.
nine. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. Now he got lucky. We could talk a lot about his routine where it can break down, and it did. His tee shots on 17 and 18 were a problem. This tournament could have gone a different way
Yeah.
real easily. But
Yeah.
now he's on the other side of it, and history's in his favor. And I think he's
Yeah.
dealing effectively with his post PTSD. And I think he still needs room for improvement, as you suggested.
Yeah. Well, let's move to let's continue on the story of the tournament, and then so we can get into some reflections at the end. But
Okay.
so we get to Saturday. The field catches up with Rory. There's a couple of names at the top of interest, sort of in the ballpark. Lowry, Rose, Henley's there.
Patrick Reed.
Obviously, Patrick Reed. Yeah. I thought it was. Quick aside, I don't want to go too far down the road. But I mean, if there's a better advertisement for leaving Live Golf
Yeah.
than watching what Koepka did and what Reed did versus what all the other Live guys were doing.
And what Rom is involved in now. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
an
exactly.
ugly
So to me,
situation.
it was like the end is near for the top players on Live in terms of staying there. But anyways, we get to Sunday and we have a pretty wild front nine. Rory makes it a bad double bogey on the par three. Rose asserts himself, sort of 4 under, playing beautifully. It looks like it's sort of he's on the trajectory to sort of pull it out, which would have been an amazing story given what happened last
Yes, it
year.
would have.
And then, we get to Amen Corner, and to me that was sort of the story of the tournament in the sense of you saw Justin Rose, who looked like he was in total command. And I couldn't help when I was watching him on 11 and 12 think about the things that you were saying where you're talking about assessment. He looked very indecisive after playing so well that he just sort of he started to question himself. He missed a shot right, then he made a bogey. Lots of people make bogey at 11.
Yes.
But the shot, it was more 12 when he was safe on the other side, and no way you should be making 5 there. And then he 3-putts. He hits a beautiful shot on 13 and 3-putts. And so to me, that was in many respects the tournament, because I thought it looked like he was in the driver's seat. And then Rory, on the other hand, navigates his way through Amen Corner at 2 under. And he birdies 12, birdies 13, and he sort of hangs on with the way he was playing through the finish line. And so, yeah, I just wanted to sort of highlight that. And of course, we saw some early collapses and some bounce backs, but it seemed to me like that was sort of the through line. It was like it was in Rose's hands, and he sort of coughed it up, and Rory sort of battled through the toughest stretch at the highest level and hung on.
Yeah, it was focusing in on Justin Rose. He had the lead going into, after the front nine, and you thought this couldn't be more perfect for him, who is a stoic, a strong player, one that keeps to his routine and rhythm, and he's not phased. He's has the ability to get the job done. That the bailout to the right on 11 is understandable. I was shocked that his pitch shot, his lovely pitch shot over that bunker, came up short, but it ended up in making bogey. And I think that his tee shot on 12, pulling it left in there, he had a bit of a downhill lie and a very difficult lie. And he just chunked it. He just stuck it in the ground, and that was unlike Rose to do so. And I think it shocked him. Then hitting such a great shot on 13 and then 3-putting, that is a confusing hole location. I never could figure it out, but I would think he would know it better than most. And it's really unfortunate. He will grab a large garbage bag of quarters and pluck every quarter into the ass-kicking machine, because this is a major championship that Justin Rose, it would have solidified his career Hall of Fame. Now he's on the verge. You probably make it, but he's on the verge right now. But this is one, and the last 2 years of the sudden death playoff, last year losing to Rory, and now this, because he had control. The only people that the player, and they fell off through Amen Corner as they usually do. The only people, players that held in the heat of battle at the front line was Rory and Scotty, and surprisingly, Justin Rose didn't pass the muster this go around. So, but it was fascinating to watch.
Yeah. I was going to say, people are probably listening, saying, "What about Scheffler?" I mean, the guy nearly architected himself to the largest comeback of all time, too. 12, like insane bogey free on the weekend, and at times, even though he was bogey free, it looked like he was underperforming.
That's right.
He was, you know what I mean? And so one of the takeaways for me from this week was, I put Rory and Scheffler in a category that few others can live in, which is to say, they can win majors without their best game.
That's right.
And what a place to be. Like you walk away and you're like I'm sure Rory would give himself at best a C or a C- on driving the golf ball at Augusta National, and he won. I mean, normally everybody else is like, I have to have everything in absolute peak form. And those two, I think, just showed, like,
that's right.
When I don't have my best, I'm still in it, and I can win it.
It could have, Scheffler's putt on 17, that should have gone in, and his second shot in 18 came up just a high short. It could have very easily, he could have finished birdie, and it could have been a Scotty Scheffler. And we're getting so accustomed to Scotty even playing well when he's not playing well. Playing, a chance to win when he's not playing well, like yesterday. It could have very easily been, a Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy playoff, or a Scotty Scheffler win outright. That could have happened very easily. I love how Scotty deals with it. He just kind of shocks it off, and hey, just trying my best.
I'll see you at Chipotle.
I'm going home to be with my family now, and I love it. I
think a burrito. I'm gonna go home and get a burrito.
It's wonderful.
So, and I don't know, like, the one other thought that I had that I want to share as we were watching, and I need to go back and look at the footage to see. But if you remember in '86, Nicklaus made that putt on 17 that is super memorable. Yeah, it looked to me like it was quite similar to Scotty's and to Henley's, in that. The only difference was, and I think, as I recall, I'm gonna proof this. So next week I'll make sure I'm correct. But I think Nicklaus said something to the effect of, "Everybody thinks that putt is going to break right, and it doesn't." And Nicklaus made it and ultimately won. And Scheffler and Henley both missed that putt a hair to the left.
Yes, 17 again is another one of those greens like 13 that what you see isn't what you get. And to talk about what Jack said to Jackie Jr., who was Jackie Jr. says, "I think it's going to break this way." And Jack says, "No, I think it's going to break towards Rays Creek." And he went with it. So his experience, it's not what you see, but his experience knew that, and then he made the putt. But that's how it, Jack goes, everything goes to, when you can't see it, and you've been confused enough times, you always default that it goes to Rays Creek. And that's what happened in '86.
Well, so I want to take a short break. We're going to come back with Rick Fehr, past PGA Tour winner, a good friend of yours, wonderful player, and a really thoughtful guy. I think a great mind to tap into for a discussion like this. I want to get his thoughts on the Masters. I want to hear some, of course, BYU stories. And I want to maybe get some insight on, in particular, the putting aspects that we saw with Rory, because I think that was the true difference in his winning. So we're going to be right back with Rick Fehr from the PGA Tour. This episode of Tough Lies is brought to you by TrueSpec AI Yardage Intelligence. Most golfers use GPS. Smart golfers use data. TrueSpec pairs high-resolution course mapping with AI-powered shot strategy. through a mobile app that knows exactly where you are on the course, current wind conditions, elevation change, and most importantly, your shot tendencies. It doesn't just tell you the number, it recommends the club, the target, even the smart miss. All you have to do is execute. TrueSpec, AI yardage intelligence, because strategy should be automatic, pressure is not. Well, we're back. Tough Lies, the Golfers podcast, and we're super pleased to be joined by former PGA Tour player and good friend of Richard's, Rick Fehr. How are you, Rick? Welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, Rick, it's really good to see you. Good to have. I just want to spend a second here bragging about my good friend Rick. Rick has been a good friend for many years. Former teammate at Brigham Young University. Rick was a freshman when I was a senior. Our team that year, without Bobby Clampett, went on to win the NCAA championship. We were ranked number one the whole season. Won at NCAA. Rick, you were a significant factor in that year. Now we have had, ironically, close careers on the PGA Tour, other than, you've played in 405, I played 412. You've won twice on the PGA Tour, the BC Open in 1986 and 1994, Walt Disney, and also more importantly, you were on the PGA Tour's policy board, and if I'm not mistaken, weren't you on the search committee for the new commissioner in like 1992 or something like that?
Yeah. So, gosh, I don't know if that's the correct year, but yeah.
Yeah, either do I.
Jay Haas and I were the two player directors that were part of the search committee that, we ended up hiring Tim Fincham, who, again, everybody can have different opinions. I thought Tim did a nice job. He was a great transition. And quite frankly, everyone thought all of the world's top minds and greatest business people would want the job. Quite frankly, like I can tell you, some quality candidates, but yeah, it wasn't that great a job. No stock options, and the environment was pretty contentious. There was a lot of criticism of Dean Beeman, and
the Ping lawsuit at the time was right around that time.
Right. Anyway, so I don't want to take up time on that, but yeah, I was on the search committee.
Rick, we just saw one heck of a Masters, record-setting in some respects. I was curious as we were preparing for today. I'm going to assume because you won on the tour twice, you've played Augusta at least twice, and I was curious, what your reflections are on this weekend, and in particular, the thing that came to mind was Rory shot out to an early lead on Thursday, Friday. And I wondered, in general, when it comes to tour events, and in particular a major, when you see somebody sort of rabbit ahead of everybody, does that affect the way you approach the course? Do you kind of go, this place is actually easier than I thought? Or, does it change your mindset? How does it affect you as a player when you see somebody sort of hopping off to an early lead like that?
Oh, interesting question. I would say not every player is going to have the same approach or the same mindset. But obviously, if somebody is trying to chase Rory down, they're probably not going to do it. Shoot an even par on the weekend. However, as we know, Rory kind of came back to the field. But certainly, it would be similar to Richard and I on tour. If you show up for lunch before your late Thursday tee time and you look on the leaderboard and you thought it was a challenging course and you see 8 under, 8 under, 777, 666, it's like, it can force you into making some poor decisions, quite frankly. Then all of a sudden you fire at pins you shouldn't and that sort of thing, and you bogey your way, out of it. So, it depends. I think that we'd like to think in this era now, players are more prepared, whether it be from a strategy standpoint, certainly a mindset standpoint, that being in the moment, sort of one shot at a time and that sort of thing would be the correct way to do it. But certainly, Colin, it's like, historically, right, rare for a six. It was the greatest or the largest 36-hole lead ever, and that sort of thing. And I'd say rather than what it does to the mindset of his competitors, I think the important thing is what's happening to Rory's mindset moving forward.
Yeah,
right? So,
no kidding.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think that's where the challenge was, and it certainly ended up being interesting.
Yeah, it really was fascinating to watch him deal with, how how it unfolded a year ago. There was a lot of confusion in his mind. It was topsy turvy. It was peaks and valleys, but he got the job done, which unburdened him to some degree. But I don't think he was out of the woods yet. And then how he went about and how it turned out now, this has just kind of vaulted him to, to 6 major championships. That puts him in a category that's getting very narrow. And now I think he's truly motivated and also unburdened to a significant degree to go ahead. Where he wasn't unburdened coming into this year's Masters, there's pressure on him. He had to, let's see how he's going to react. But I think it's very impressive. And the interesting, I want to ask you about his ability to prepare for this year's Masters, Rick. How about today's golf pros? He gets up early in the morning, takes his daughter to school, jumps on his jet, flies to Augusta from Jupiter, plays 18 holes and practice run, puts in a great day, and then he's home for dinner. And he did that a few times. And he spoke openly about how he wasn't in favor of the 3 tournaments prior to the Masters, and they weren't interesting. He didn't like them and chose not to play them. That was really unfortunate. But what are your thoughts on how today's golfers are preparing for events?
Yeah, it's certainly different. It's different than, obviously you and I had, long-standing careers, but never at the level of those guys. And so
right.
In our era, Nicky Price or Greg Norman may have done such a thing. But, it's interesting. I'd love to give you a direct answer, but I quite frankly, I don't know. I mean, there's so much, right? The discussion, podcasts like yours and Scribes and everything, there is so much trying to figure it out going on. And I'd say there's so much nuance. There's so much it depends. And we don't know. If he had gone to Bora Bora and laid on the beach for 3 weeks, he may have won by 12. I mean, we really don't know.
That's right.
But I just think that, and I don't know Rory, and so you and I know Brad Faxon pretty well, and Brad works closely with Rory, and I don't invade that space, but I know both of us probably feel like there is, with all fairness and respect to Rory, I feel like I don't know how much greater he could be, but I feel like some of the chaos that surrounds Rory's style, is just maybe his personality, and that's where he needs to be. But I do think that, and I know he's working with Bob Rotella and everything, but I still feel like there are too many moments that where he disappears, where maybe he could kind of stay on task more. But I do think
tighten it up a bit.
Yeah, and interesting. I texted Brad
Faxon
this yesterday morning after this. I think the second or third hole of the round, and I just said, hey, I loved seeing Rory hitting these kind of fade type hold shots, because for years I've felt like if Rory could just get rid of the drop it, swing too far out to the right, he's in love with the draw, and like all of us, when we go to one extreme and go too far and drift off, then all of a sudden the problems arise. And so Brad responded with, yeah, wasn't it cool that he figured it out on his own? I mean, he was on the practice grounds by himself with Harry, not with Michael Bannon, not with anyone, just no track man, just out there. Rory knew he needed to fight that big inside out swing that causes problems for him. And he obviously didn't get through the round unscathed. He still hit a few shots that were loose, but I think that moment, that Saturday evening on the practice grounds, won him the tournament, because there was no way he was going to be able to finish the deal the way he hit it on Saturday.
Yeah. Colin, you have a question?
Yeah.
I want to come back to this just because you went into that, but Colin, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, one key takeaway for me, I mean, you guys are both friends with Faxon. He putted the lights out, right? Like, I mean, he was number 2 in putting after the first 2 days. He putted really well. He gave himself an A+ in putting, which I think is, not always the case. And so I think we should go all in on investing in a Brad Faxon like putting academy or something like that. But what notes in specific, as it pertains to putting under those circumstances, my question was going to be around, how is it that you can mindset yourself so that you can, it seems like almost with Rory, he just needs to be able to let it go with the putter. And I was curious sort of what your observations were specifically around that aspect of his game and why it was so successful on obviously perhaps the greatest set of greens on the planet.
Yeah. So, first of all, there's obviously a technical element to putting. I mean, I would not deny that. I mean, if somebody can't, without the pressure of the Masters on Sunday, if they can't, on Tuesday morning, they can't get the ball started on line or their intended line, we got a problem. So, but typically the players at that level, at least in this era, I think they're all capable of getting the ball started on line. So then, and it's, this isn't, I'm not teeing it up for Zoke, for Mind Track or whatever, but simply like, it's so interrelated. We're complex adaptive systems as humans. And so the mindset, which we don't have live feed of his brainwave activity and that sort of thing. It'd be super
Not yet anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's coming, I'm sure. Right. But actually I have a little band I use with students from time to time, just measuring brainwave activity. And so it's super important, right? So the source of when somebody hits a poor shot, historically all the way back to Ken Venturi's days is like, he made a bad swing or whatever else. And, and if so, like, where did the bad swing come from? Or where did the bad putting stroke come from? And to your point, Colin, I think that Rory, his process is probably simpler and smoother and more committed. Those are all general terms, but and I certainly knowing Brad well enough that I would say he's probably not as much into the minutia, and
right.
He probably uses some technology, but he's not leaning on it, quite frankly. And I try to be as positive as possible, but we're in an era now where people don't respect. Obviously I was a great putter as well. And Colin, I went 72 holes there without a 3-putt. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's not normal. And that was without knowing the greens very well. That was as an amateur. And so it's like, intuitively I knew how to putt really well. I was blessed with that my whole career. Yeah. But I think that, so my leanings would be, I love seeing sort of the process, being not speedy and rushed, but
calm and contained and committed.
Yeah, exactly. And even watching, because we had a local kid here, Roy Moon won the drive, chip, and putt in the 9 to 10-year-old. So I was watching that on Sunday morning, and I think Augusta National maybe changed the rules this year where there was, they had a shot clock, whatever. So we saw
that's good.
We saw far less. And I'm not opposed to aim point, but it's just we saw really quick and efficient processes, and I think Rory is kind of in that space, and I think that because his circle, so to speak, seems to me to be not highly technical, and that I think he plays freely, and I think he needs to be in that space, and I think if somebody tried to confine him to more precision technique-wise, I think it's what's ruined a lot of great players. So anyway, it's great to see that. But I will say, guess what? Justin Rose staying on task, a little bit more on that back nine, it would be a different conversation we're having, because very easily could have lost that thing yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to point out that Rick was consistently one of the top putters on the PGA Tour for a good part of 2 decades, and his your prowess and your ball striker. You were a great ball striker as well. But I do want to get back to it's funny that you reached out to Faxon. What was it, during the round?
Yeah, it was. It was early in the round. Just shot him. I don't communicate with Brad that often, but I just it was like, because I felt like the way Rory played, and even quite frankly his 12 under there were a lot of loose shots, right? I mean,
Sure, there were.
if
Yes,
you look at, he made what, 24 birdies, I think it was, or whatever, and finished what, 11 under, right? So there's a lot of bogeys and there were a couple doubles, and so maybe that's his style of play. Maybe he'll forever have that style, a la Arnold Palmer. But anyway, but I think that I felt like I know the golf swing well enough. I'm quite frankly pretty confident exactly what Rory was doing and what the struggle was, and the struggle he was in, quite frankly, can't be managed. Like he's not going to be able to settle his mind when he's got the two-way miss and the club face shutting left because he's too much from the inside. I mean, you could be a mental champion and you're not going to be able to pull it off. But he found something to go with for Sunday.
he got it working. Yeah, ironically enough, and I was in the same boat. Do I reach out to Faxon? Do I not? And I just said, "Oh hell, I got to do it." And this is before the round. Before the round, so here's my text.
He got bombed with texts.
And I'm going, geez, I don't want to be that guy, But anyway, this was my text to him. This is before the round, early in the morning. I said, Brad, excuse my boldness. I had to apologize for this right out of the blocks. Excuse my boldness, but you and Rory's team need to profess just how important it is for Rory to shorten, tighten his shot routine. He has way too many looks at his target before he pulls the trigger. Rory's rhythm and his two look sequence with his shot on the range is bloody perfect. And so I've been watching and counting his looks, and it's a bit of an echo of what's going on. He's consistently having 6 looks. Last year, he was up to 9 looks. And then when you look, this is with tee shots and full swing shots. When you look at Rory's short game, 17, and I said to my son before he hit, I said, watch this. He's going to take 3 looks with his chipping and pitching. And they're beautiful shots, and 3 looks, bang, Nick knocks it up there in gimme range. But when you look at him on the range, after the round, he takes 2 looks and lets it go, pulls the trigger, and it's beautiful. And then I had to send Brad this way. He said, congratulations to Rory and Rory's team. Great stuff from Rory, but he still needs to tighten up his shot routine. Thanks, Brad. I couldn't help it. I had to put that out there, and you've been good friends with Brad for such a long time as well.
That's really fun.
So let's jump to. Sorry, Colin, you jump in there and ask.
Well, I was going to say. I wanted to. You mentioned Doak had a callback to talking to Brad Faxon. I was listening to what you're saying, and I just want you to know I'm gonna let my wife know that I am a complex adaptive system, and she needs to know that.
Well, it's interesting. It's like I think I probably picked up that phrase from Dr. Rob Gray or whatever, but it's like I think all of us, certainly I know Richard and I are super curious type people, right? So we've been exploring for decades, trying to figure it out, and I think sometimes need to recognize that not everybody has had that journey. Either they're younger and they haven't had the time, or they're not heading that way. So I can be annoying because I'll pull it into nuance and it depends, and because it's a very interactive system. Performance is, and I think that and I know Zoke, you might be identified now as a specialist, meaning you're the mind track guy, but I think that when you referenced Rory's team, whoever that is, right? That you'd like, if you have, he's got his physio guy, he's got his whatever, and the question I have, and I had a interesting conversation with Raymond Pryor, who this is back, I guess now a year and a half ago, and observed him standing behind a player at the KPMG LPGA, and he kind of grabbed me. We had Zoom calls before, but I met him in person for the first time, and he's standing there quietly with his arms folded, kind of back behind the player quite a ways.
Tell our guest who Raymond Pryor is.
Oh yeah, performance psychologist. Is that how you would call him? But
psychologist, sports psychologist.
Right, exactly, and brilliant guy, right? Yeah. And I've spent time chatting with him a little bit, and Rick Sessinghouse a lot. So so Raymond is obviously. I said, hey, are you working with her? And so there's this professional hitting balls on the range, and I'm not going to mention the swing coach, Zoke, you know him. The swing coach, this was Wednesday before the tournament, and this swing coach has her trying to change positions and everything like that. And I turned to Raymond. I said, do you and so-and-so, do you guys chat?
Get along?
And he just like...
Wow.
And I pardon my language, but what the hell are you thinking right now? Because he's probably got her geared up to be in the right mental state, and it's this panic sort of environment of trying to change her swing, whatever, 24 hours before the tournament. So anyway, all that to say, there's I think that maybe people that if we think we know it would be better for a player like Rory, hey, until you know the full team and what kind of conversations they have, whatever. But I think he would be on the side. He needs to be free, and to your point, Zoke, a couple looks or whatever it is and go. Real clarity and decision, and don't let the noise enter.
Right.
The longer you stand there, nothing's happening.
The more potential can go sideways.
Right.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
Well, and I wanted to close the loop. Kidding aside, I wanted to close the loop. Like, to me, one of the things I really appreciate what you're saying, Rick, is and take this as a compliment. The smartest people, in my experience, are the ones who are the most comfortable in admitting uncertainty. They have to be comfortable with not knowing. And I think what a lot of values in what you're saying is, you don't necessarily know, and you're searching and you're trying to find answers and you're experimenting and all those sorts of things. And I really think that's a great value driver in terms of what people can take out of this particular discussion, to the practice range. What I find a lot is a lot of people, they feel very sort of unwilling to try new things. They find one little thing that might work and they just sort of try to hammer it home. But it sounds to me like what you're saying is, there's a lot out there. Try it, experience it, and find what works for you.
Yeah, true. And it depends. Like, I know everybody wants certainty, and I don't want to open, I'll finish this. I would say right now in my career, I'm talking about not my playing career, so I've been coaching now over a period of 20 plus years. Never in that time frame have I felt that golfers are buying more BS. Like right now, they know more things and information, but they've lost the plot, most of them. So many don't know what matters. And so I think, it's not as simple as a 51-degree trail wrist angle or shallowing the club. Like, and they just keep trying all these things, and it's like, well, that could work, but it's not the answer, so to speak.
And it's not playing the game. Right.
Yeah. Playing golf. Playing golf in competition in a competitive environment. Now, Rick, you that's a good segue on to the next one. When you were a junior golfer and you were looking for colleges, you were one of the most highly recruited junior players in the nation, were you not? I believe you were.
I think I'm a humble guy, but I think the answer is yes.
Yes. So you which
Where's
which
that
schools?
NIL money?
So you went. Why did you choose BYU opposed to and what other schools were you looking at that time?
Yeah. So as you've learned at this point, short answers aren't my forte, but here we go. Okay.
So we love it. We love it.
Okay. So I grew up at a course here in Seattle, Sandpoint Country Club, and a fellow member there, or junior there, Mike Gove. So Mike. Mike went to Weber State, so up
Weber
the road
State,
there in Utah, and he pulled me aside and says, "Hey, Rick, I don't know what you're going to do for college, but hey, if you have a chance, you really need to take a look at BYU." So Mike gave a glowing endorsement for the BYU program and Coach Tucker and all that. So that was a kind of a thumbs up. Wake Forest, Oklahoma State, Ohio State, UCLA were
the big guns.
Well, yeah.
Well, we were a big gun as well.
And I visited a couple of those, but when I visited BYU and so I don't know what my experience, it felt comfortable. I mean, there was a lot of glitz and whatever of UCLA, but I guess it felt a little scary to go there to school. Whereas, and Eddie Merens was the head coach, Norm Edelman was the assistant, but I didn't feel like I would be looked after the same way as the vibe I got visiting BYU. So anyway, so it just felt like a great place, and obviously, perennially ranked in the top 5 in the country. I know they're not quite at that same spot, but I felt like we were going to have a chance to do big things, and it just felt right, and it was a little closer to home than going all the way back east. So, and it worked out great. I had a great 4 years there, and yeah.
And your contribution as a freshman, like there's not too many people that can come in, even whether you get a full ride or not, you come in and make a significant contribution. But you were right there immediately as a freshman, and then our 5 guys that played the traveling squad for the finals. That was exciting times for us. We really
it really was. It
gave
really
us the
was.
bond, didn't it?
It did, and in life, whether people say it's luck or fortune or whatever it is, I got there my freshman year immediately in qualifying. I just was going
Made the
crazy,
squad.
lighting it up. I wanted
You were.
qualifiers, so I got on the team right away. And had that been different, if I had shown up and struggled, who knows what would have happened? But a lot of good things happened.
Yeah, well, good stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Well, on that note, I think we're gonna say thank you so much again for Rick for joining us. I mean, amazing discussion. I think Brad Faxon's probably turned his phone off.
I got my response, later in the evening, probably after he did his.
The shoe will be on the other foot, I'm sure. It's great.
Right.
But a fantastic weekend. Thanks for your insights. I really appreciate it. I think there's lots to reflect on in what you said. And like I said, to me, a sure sign of somebody you're talking to that is high level, thoughtful, clever, is somebody who's willing and open about the uncertainty that goes with playing the game of golf. And I really appreciate that.
Well,
It's great having you, Rick.
Yeah. And I would say, just I'll wrap with this, but Colin, interesting. I feel like I've grown and become better and better, and I'd say there's fewer gaps in my understanding, but I'm not.
Right.
But
yeah.
But I do feel like more than ever before, I've moved myself off to an island. So I feel like, I just feel like the mainstream, I just feel like I'm drifting further and further away from mainstream because whatever, I've become crazy. But anyway,
you don't sound like it to me. That's for sure.
No. It's really fun. It's interesting, and pursuing a greater level of understanding so I can help people more effectively. That's been the motivation, and
enjoying the search. I think it seems evident to me that you're really enjoying that journey. So that's great to hear.
I am.
Yeah, I think crazy is the norm, and there's a few of us that are anomalies that are still trying to take it back to the old ways.
I couldn't possibly be the only crazy person south of that border, could I?
No, we're a team together, always have been, and always will be, Rick.
Thanks again so much, Rick, for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Right. And we're back. Wow, that was such a great discussion with Rick Fehr. I really appreciate it. I hope the listeners do too. I love people with curious minds who accept uncertainty and really are searching, always on that search for enlightenment, betterment when it comes to the game of golf, the game of life, all those things. Really, really great discussion. I do want to circle back with you, and I want to spend a few minutes talking about the mind track side of things, and I want to get your thoughts. Sort of what should we take away on that aspect as it pertains to the Masters?
Well, I think the mind track moment is, which was so obvious in the final round at the Masters, was Rory's shot routine and pre-shot routine. Now, basically, there's a lot of people that talked about that on Twitter, in the Twitter world, about Rory's routine and whether it's a pre-shot routine. It's, first of all, you got to get clarity. The pre-shot routine is all about gathering information. You lie, and it leads to decisions that you what club you're going to hit, what type of shot. So that's a pre-shot. You haven't hit the shot, so it's pre. The shot routine is directly the routine that causes you to strike the golf ball. And the routine, it's why it's so important, is that you need the same thing. You have to condition yourself and continually condition yourself for this to get you through these difficult moments. So what I looked about, I've been talking about Rory's routine for the last couple of years. Last year, particularly with his driver, where he's quite wild with it, and he chooses to play that game, that he was taking up to 9 looks at the target before he'd pull the trigger. Now he's consistently doing up to 6, up maybe 7, 6, or typically 6, maybe 7, and sometimes 5. But his short game, he does 3 looks, and he's brilliant with his short game over the weekend. But it's really important to have, and I sent, as I mentioned, Faxon a note saying the Rory team needs to impose upon Rory that the shorter and tighter his shot routine is, the more success he's going to have. The longer your routine, the longer you hang over the ball, the increases the chances of thoughts come to your mind to break your rhythm, which will blow the shot. So the real situation is, everyone needs to, if you need to perform well under pressure, you need to condition yourself with your pre-shot routine and your shot routine in every single shot. Then you need to rely on it. So go to the range, work with someone who, you can do it by yourself, but you have to go, and it has to have some form of cadence, like step in there, 1 look, waggle, 2 looks, waggle, pull the trigger. And you can incorporate your breathing with it, but it's critically important to have a distinct pre-shot routine, then into a shot routine if you want to perform under pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And I didn't mention before we started the show, but I had I played on I guess it was Saturday evening.
Yep.
And I had the best round I played in years.
Cool.
And
What'd you shoot?
I shot 70.
Nice.
And on the Predator course here, and I would give definitely some credit to the things that we've been talking about on the show, in particular the assessment side. So for me, I would say I was sort of skipping over what's the shot here assessment side of playing good golf and sort of getting very, very sort of mechanical in my sort of pre-shot, and I wasn't seeing the shot in a way that sort of helped me, and in particular on short shots like chip shots, but that sort of thing, sort of really playing to targets as opposed to sort of thinking about the mechanics of what I was doing. So very, very helpful. So thank you in advance.
One other thing I do want to add on that, and we're watching a lot, those who watch a lot of golf, you're listening to interviews of the top players, and all the players are constantly saying it's all about, execution. They say execution, execution, execution. But the execution is only half of the key performance markers. It doesn't matter. The players need to assess the situation better, a la maybe hit 3-wood off the tee rather than driver in Rory's case, but it's more than just execution. Execution is just the other half of the key performance markers that players need to. Too often the pre-shot routine and the decision gets short shrift, and until the player really grabs hold of making sure that their key performance marker on their pre-shot routine is just as important and relatable to the execution, the shot routine that players need to make. So there's still a gap in there that a lot of players don't seem to understand. But once you marry those two together, that's when you're going to be able to perform at your highest.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm looking forward to better golf ahead, even for myself, and hopefully for the listeners at home. They're going to take some of what you're saying and adapt it to their own game and really benefit. I did want to share a couple of high-level just observations. I couldn't resist as I was watching all this stuff to write some notes on what I saw on the broadcast. The first thing I would say, like every time I see Cam Young, I think I just, to me, I don't know. I mean, he just looks to me more like if you put a picture of him up, I'd say that guy just won the Poconos 500. Like he just does not look like a pro golfer to me in sort of the way he carries himself. But it's kind of fun in that way. Like I did enjoy that. I thought Jason Day lost the tournament with a shirt. Like, what was that? I mean, look, I was like, people are wearing, mostly bland stuff, but you go. Tiger Woods has the there's Sunday red. Mike Weir and Gary Player would always wear black on Sunday. I noticed that Lowry was wearing black on Sunday. And there's Jason Day, who looks like he was tending bar for an episode of the Golden Girls. It's like, what the hell is going
A little
on
unfitted.
oh my God! It was like a crushed velvet. I don't know what was, anyways.
Yeah.
And then I was watching the TSN broadcast, and they have Weeksy and those guys on. And then Graham Dillette's on there, right? And Graham Dillette, I was just like, he was wearing a shirt that I think it was, to call it snug would have been polite.
Two sizes too small?
I was like, the guy went shopping in the youth section of Target or something. Like, what the hell?
He's getting buffed. He's getting buffed up shoulders.
He definitely wants to show that he's in shape, and the mission accomplished there. And then,
Well, here oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to sort of finish off my thoughts too. I thought there was what I would call a production double bogey on 18. They had the two, if you remember, both approach shots on 18 for Cam Young and Rory. They didn't know where they were.
Yeah.
Right?
They got a little confused. Yeah.
They literally didn't know whose ball was in the bunker. And whether it was Rory's, they're like, he's got to go check his ball. I'm like, how do you not know? Like, I realized they're in the boot. They're both on other sides. But from a production standpoint, there was a gap in time of when we knew where the ball was, which for a high level production like that, I thought was very unusual.
Yeah.
And that last thought was the tech side. I spent all week really of Masters Week on their TV app, and I could pick the players I wanted to watch. I could see all their shots, and they would show them successfully like this. And I just kept saying, like, why? I hope to hell that's what they're bringing to the PGA Tour, because that's what we need. We need to be able to see. We're living in a Netflix world where we can watch whatever show we want whenever we want. And yet when it comes to watching golf, or we can't see the players that we want to see hit shots. Like, that seems crazy to me in this world.
Technology should be filling that gap, and I think I agree with you. I hope they won. But
Yeah.
my takeaway that I got a big kick out of was Hang Tong Lee. If I said his name.
Hao Tong Lee, yes.
Hao Tong Lee, yeah. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, he tasted the heat of battle both on on Saturday and Sunday. But what I loved is that he is the self-proclaimed best-looking guy in China. I love that because, you know why? Because it says so on his sandwich. Colt Knost looked at that, brought that one up. I roared. That self-proclaimed most attractive male in China. So love the humor on that.
Yeah, and that's a significant population you're dealing with. So to be number one, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, no, there's great stuff. I did want to conclude our discussion and wrap it up for this episode with a look ahead for Rory. I don't think we can come away from a weekend like this where he obviously repeated. He's now one of four to have won back-to-back Masters. Woods, Nicholas, Faldo, right? And then also he's now in the same breath as Varden and Faldo in terms of the best European ever. And listening to his presser, I got the sense, to the discussion we had, even going into this, he's freer, he's comfortable, he knows, he's got the internal discipline to sort of recognize what he needs to do, and he's winning majors again without his best game. So what do you think the future looks like for Rory McIlroy?
Well, I think his goal is going to have to be, he wants to get to 9 or over 9 major wins. So he's got 6, so he gets 3 to get him to that celestial kingdom, so to speak, with major championships. But the thing is, what's always going to haunt him, because you can't undo the post-traumatic stress disorder. He's going to have to really work hard on his mental discipline, because every time he gets in that position to get the next major and the next major and the next major, it's going to be a repeat of the previous 12 years prior to last year and his job is going to change the channel every time that if he grabs the lead in the tournament, and he's going to probably feel more comfortable in the pack. This is the pattern that's established, and that he's going to have to learn how to deal with that. And he'll get scrutinized, and if he gets short of temper, if he handles it with freedom, he's going to be able to kind of be like Scotty and let it go. That's part of the freedom of dealing with it. So that's what's going to happen with him, I believe, in the future.
What do you think's more likely? He wins another Masters, or he wins one of the other majors?
I think he has to kind of get containment of his driver, and then he's open to all majors. I think he'll have a strong advantage at Augusta because he's proven that he can handle the heat, and the others may not be able to. But it's the same thing goes with the U.S. Open. He's going to have to put it in the fairway. If he's driving it in the deep rough at a U.S. Open, this is where he's got significant room for improvement, as you alluded to earlier. It exposed him. I mean, this is he's in last place as far as tee shot accuracy off the tee. That's not good.
Yeah, my money's on him winning another Masters versus the others. Only not that he can't fix his driving issues, and maybe one of the either. I think the U.S. Open probably proved the most difficult, but the PGA, or in particular, a wide open sort of course like St. Andrews or something like that, where he can really sort of
let it go.
I think that's the most likely. But I just sort of see him. He's got to be walking away going, I just won the Masters. I didn't have my best. I know I can do. Like, just imagine if I was on my game for 4 days. There's nobody's going to touch me. So, but a fantastic
I think that's in there.
week.
Yep.
Yeah, a fantastic week. Great discussion. Thanks again to Rick Fehr for joining us. Wonderful discussion with him. Keep it in the fairways. Make sure to follow us, like and subscribe. toughliespodcast.transistor.fm, on Instagram at toughliespodcast, and on Twitter or X. Either follow Zoke or follow us, or do both, at Tough Lies Pod on X. And thanks again for another great week. It was a fantastic week of golf on Masters. We're so excited for the golf season ahead. So thanks again for joining us, Zoke, and on to next week.
Thanks again, Colin. Always a pleasure.
Join us next week on the Golfers Podcast with Richard Zokel and Colin McDougall.